At this time, we have the unique honor of Lisa Sprague to present the story of her great uncle, who was missing in action and presumed dead for over 68 years, only to be repatriated. And we are very honored and very lucky to have this very unique perspective of the family to tell their story of their uncle and great uncle and family member who died so long ago. And sure, they'll say it, but I'll say it too. His items, some of the items that were recovered are on display downstairs, and it was one of the greatest honors. Kylie, who volunteered to help to put up the display, and we got to put it together, and it was probably one of the more moving and emotional displays I've ever had to put up. Knowing this individual I've never known before, but yet he's a part of this museum family forever, and we are very honored to have him here. This time, please welcome Lisa.
So welcome, it's your lucky day. I have in my possession secret information regarding the newest Hollywood blockbuster movie. It's so secret that there isn't even a title to the movie yet, but I have sneak peek photos and sound bites from the movie set. It's a romance movie and it's a war movie filled with suspense. Man meets woman, man goes to war, man's declared MIA. End of story? For many years, the world would wonder what happened to the handsome 23-year-old man who went to war with his 3 brothers and 1 brother-in-law, but never came home. He lived on in old photographs and family lore, but disappeared along a battle along the Weilerbaan Road in the Netherlands. But don't worry, this has a happy ending. Let me show you what I have. This is our leading man. His name is Gerald Kight, aka Uncle Mike. Mike was born on December 20th, 1920 in Cove, Oregon to Raymond and Nina Kight. They lived in Oregon for a few years before moving to Klickitat County, Washington. His father worked as a logger and Mike helped the family income by picking fruit. In his freshman year, he sang in the operetta and was a 4-year member of the Glee Club. He was a member of the class which graduated on the 28th of May, 1940. After graduating from high school, he joined the Civilian Conservation Corps and was sent to Alaska. Later in August of 1942, he enlisted in the U.S. Army. Soon after, the 4 brothers that would join him in fighting in World War II were Marion, Frank, which was his brother-in-law, Pat, and Shorty. But more about Mike in a minute. This is our leading lady, Olive. Olive was 18 years old and lived in Leicester, which is in the Midlands, a region of England. She lived there with her 4 elder sisters and her mother, as Olive's father had passed away 2 years prior, and she worked in a munitions factory during World War II. Her 4 sisters were married but living at home as their husbands were away fighting for their country. Olive met our leading man when Mike was 23 years old. During this time, he was stationed in barracks in Evington, which is part of Leicester. They met at a tea dance. Mike was with another American soldier, and Mike's friend decided that whoever came down the stairs first, then he would talk to her first. Olive came down the stairs second, and Mike said to her he was so pleased about that. They started dating, and Mike had some days on leave, which he spent with Olive. Olive got into trouble one day with her boss because she didn't go to work, she went to the movies instead. And she had to go before a panel and explain her actions. This was out of character to do so, as she went to church regularly and is what you would call a good girl. Mike took Olive's younger brother Billy with him to buy an engagement ring for her soon after he realized he was in love with her. It had 2 diamonds in it. Mike and Olive were allowed to sit on the front room that last night before he went away. He had secretly given a letter to Olive's mom for her to give to Olive the next day. In that letter, he told her that he was going away in the morning. He didn't know where, but that he loved her and that he would be back for her. The next morning, she heard heavy machines traveling up the main road out of the city. Months later, Olive was heartbroken when she was learned that Mike was MIA. She waited for 3 years before she would date again. Only then did she move on with her life. In 1942, Mike enlisted in the United States Army in Tacoma, Washington, and volunteered as a paratrooper. After the arduous training, he was an elite member of the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne, the Devil in Baggy Pants. He arrived in England in 1944. It was there that Mike was to make his combat jump into the operation that was supposed to bring the war in Europe to an end before Christmas. It was the failed Operation Market Garden. Mike was attached to the headquarters company, 3rd Battalion, when he dropped near the town of Grave, just southwest of Nijmegen, on September 17, 1944. His unit was successful in securing the first bridge near Grave that crossed the Moss Canal, but the remaining two had been blown away by the Germans. Later, on September 20th, Mike was part of H&I's company famous, daring, and deadly assault across the Wall River. The two companies were given British assault boats that were simply canvas and wood. The Germans were able to destroy nearly half the boats on their first assault with artillery and heavy machine gun fire. Mike and the other survivors of the daring assault managed to overtake the German forces and secured the nearby bridge. 8 days later, on September 28th, PFC Kight was killed during one of the biggest and concentrated attacks on the 82nd Troopers defense line during Operation Market Garden. Over 100 Germans with many German tanks wanted to pass their position called Grutendal to attack Den Heuvel Woods, an important high ground between the 82nd drop zone and the German border. In the MIA file, it's clearly stated that Mike was the machine gunner and was ordered to relieve pressure on the I Company, which occupied the Den Heuvel Woods. His position was overrun, but because of Mike, most of his platoon members could retire. Although wounded, he used all of his ammo, even his personal weapon, a Colt 1911. Attempts were made to locate Kight through the International Red Cross in hopes that he'd been captured, but no records were found. After the war, a search of his remains and other accompanied G were made, but the search did not reveal the fate of PFC Kight. In September of 1945, the U.S. Army declared that he was missing in action and presumed dead. It was determined that Private Class Gerald W. Kight was entitled to the Bronze Star Medal, World War II Victory Medal, Army Good Conduct Medal, Purple Heart with 1 bronze oak leaf cluster, and a few other honorable recognitions. Many other people starring in this movie are family members, including Michael and Sharon Dolan, and those closely affected by the remains of World War II, even those from the Netherlands. But most affected were the Three Musketeers. The featured member of this story are the Three Musketeers that ultimately found Gerald Kight. Paul Guchis and his buddies Rick and Mario searched with their metal detectors on former battlefields. For the record, they did not search for an organization. They were just enjoying going out as three good friends. They collected what they found and showed these items to the locals to learn more what happened in the Groesbeck area during World War II. It started out as an innocent hobby at the age of 16, but later they purchased more heavy equipment. They had detectors that could go from 2 to 6 feet deep. They mostly would find small items, but also helmets, personal gear, and even sometimes a T5 parachute. On some occasions, the items were named, which gave them the opportunity to trace the owner. In September of 2011, they made the most important discovery of their lives. It was a sunny Sunday morning, and after walking for many hours, the detector generated a significant sound. Paul immediately realized that this was an interesting signal. When they started digging, he found some empty shells in a .30 caliber ammo box. Mario and his son Chris immediately joined, and after finding a small neck bone and locating an upper leg bone, they realized that it was a field grave. They were completely stunned and immediately stopped digging and informed the local police. A few days later, the professional team of the Royal Dutch Army excavated the field grave. The remains in this one depression, which may have been formed when a shell landed in battle, had evidence of a man lying on his back with his knees elevated. Next to the remains, they located dog tags and some personal items like a canteen, wallet, pen, and coins. They found out that the canteen had an inscription starting with the letter K. They were not allowed to read the dog tags, of course. The family should know first. But they realized the importance of this find. They were the remains of the 82nd Airborne Paratrooper, who liberated them but became missing in action over 67 years ago. And a unique discovery, since the last U.S. soldier who was found in this area was 1993. Almost 8 months passed before receiving news about the identity. On the 6th of May, 2012, they received a phone call which they will never forget. Out of nowhere, the farmer, Mr. Jansen, called to inform them that an American couple, Michael and Sharon Dolan, had arrived in the Groesbeck area to ask information regarding their beloved uncle who was found in September last year. Paul immediately realized that he'd finally hear the official name, Gerald W. Kight.
War can change.
Anyway, there was supposed to be a poem. I guess I'll read it. This is actually from Paul, who found the remains. I have learned about the Second World War from my history books. This to give an impression how war looks. During that war, many souls were torn. This happened even before my father was born. We can now live in freedom because we were liberated in that war. Young men fighting in a country that they'd never known before. What went through their minds when facing the biggest threat? Seeing young people die that they previously had met. There was this big attack which became fatal for you. Many Nazi soldiers made your unit withdrew. You got wounded in a foxhole all alone, probably with thoughts of your loved one back home. Your wounds became fatal and you passed away. The field became no man's land and you were MIA. Your loved ones had to live in agony for the rest of their lives. Someday he'll return was in your mother's prayers. 67 years later, we searched with our detectors on a plowed farmland. We found human remains which were covered with sand. Our freedom became your freedom when you were found. You will soon rest in peace on your holy ground. Okay. Now you're home after so many years. You can reunite with your family. And shed their tears.
War can change a boy from loving home and peace. Our boys that learned to be rough and tough while this mighty war was on are now plain boys of yesterday with a spirit that's far from gone. They worked and fought through cold till VE Day was won. Then in rest gave thanks to God and turned to the rising sun. Their deeds will not be forgotten, nor the heroes that were left behind to lay beneath a cross of white for peace of all mankind. For now, those who are still left with their jobs complete turn their thoughts all towards home, to their folks a sweetheart, a wife so sweet. Your boys are still no different, though they've been through living hell. Their toughness was all finished when the last invader fell.
So for the closing of this story, Uncle Mike's remains were brought back home, escorted by the Patriot Guard on May 19th, 2012.
A star that still can be seen Mother and Daddy were left all alone as they watched all their sons march away, with tears in their eyes they kissed them goodbye and put a star for their names. 5 stars now hang in their windows so bright, and their pictures are seen all displayed. But their hearts have been heavy all through this last year, for in Holland a son's life has been paid. For only 1 star still hangs since this cruel war been won, for the rest of us were spared and came through, to help build America, for which one of us died, with peace and contentment under the red, white, and blue.
So before I close this Hollywood story, you probably guessed this really isn't a Hollywood story without a title. But I challenge each and every one of you to make up your own title. Even more, I hope that you'll tell your own true story. Document it somehow. Tell it in a venue that you find most comforting, for we all have a story to pass on. No matter how uncomfortable or taboo you may feel, please tell it so it may not be forgotten, like many of our missing men. They do say that life imitates art, and this event was graphically portrayed in the 1977 film A Bridge Too Far with Robert Redford. He played Major Julian Cook, commanding officer, 3rd Battalion, 504th PIR, 82nd Airborne, portraying the U.S. Army seizing key bridges over the Moss Wall Canal and the River Salt crossing the Wall River. A Bridge Too Far is a 1977 British-American epic war film based on the 1974 book by the same name by Cornelius Ryan. The film tells the story of the failure of Operation Market Garden during World War II. The operation was intended to allow the Allies to break through German lines and seize several bridges, including occupied Netherlands, including one in Arnhem, which is the main objective of outflanking German defenses in order to end the war by Christmas of 1944. The name of the film comes from an unconfirmed comment attributed to British Lieutenant General Frederick Brownie, Deputy Commander of the 1st Allied Airborne Army, who told Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, the operations architect, before the operation, "I think we may be going a bridge too far," in reference to the intention of seizing the Arnhem bridgehead over the Rhine River. We are lucky to have Uncle Mike home, but the families who are missing someone for the past war can contact any convenient military facility to be put in touch with the service casualty officer for each military branch. They can also check to see whether they can submit a DNA sample for the accounting command's registry. See, I told you the story had a happy ending. Thank you for listening.